September 13, 1935. A silver bullet screams over a California beet field at 352 miles per hour. The pilot has no radio, the fuel tank is dry, the landing gear is stuck. Most billionaires sit in boardrooms. Howard Hughes is about to crash land his own invention. 1935. Aviation is still in its Wild West era. Biplanes are crafted from fabric and wire. Speed records are held by dangerous, unstable machines. And the world's richest man is lying under a fuselage covered in grease. We know the legend of Howard Hughes, the recluse, the billionaire, the madness. But that is the end of the story. To understand why he ended up that way, we must examine how he started. We must look at the machine that nearly killed him, and the engineering obsession that changed history. Hughes didn't start with airplanes. He started with rock. His father, Howard Sr., invented the two-cone rotary drill bit. Before this, oil drills scraped at the rock like a fingernail. The Hughes bit crushed it. It ate through granite. It amassed a fortune for the family. But when Howard Jr. inherited the company at 18, he had little interest in oil. He cares about friction. Hughes dropped out of university. He dismissed the board of directors. He took the oil money and poured it into a hangar in Glendale, California. His goal? To build the fastest land plane in the world. He didn't recruit famous aircraft designers. He hired a team of young, hungry engineers and told them, "I want it smooth." This is the H-1 Racer. Look at it. Even today it appears modern. In 1935, it looked like an alien spacecraft. Most aircraft of the era had bumpy skin, thousands of rivet heads protruding into the wind. Each rivet creates a tiny vortex of drag. Multiply that by 10,000 and you have a wall of air holding you back. Hughes demanded flush riveting. His team had to machine the aluminium skin so the rivets sat perfectly flat. Then they puttied over the cracks and sanded it down. Then they painted it. Then they sanded it again. Hughes would run his hand over the wing. If he felt a bump, they started over. It wasn't just the skin, it was the engine. The Pratt & Whitney Twin Wasp Jr., a radial engine, large, round and flat, like pushing a dinner plate through the wind. Hughes's engineers designed a bell-shaped cowling, a tight aerodynamic cover that sucked air in to cool the engine, but guided the wind smoothly around the fuselage. They added retractable landing gear, something almost unheard of in racing planes. When the H-1 took off, the wheels folded up into the wing, leaving a perfectly streamlined bullet. September 13, 1935. Hughes climbs into the cockpit. He doesn't hire a test pilot, he flies it himself. The objective is the world speed record, 314 miles per hour. He takes off. The H-1 screams over the timing course. Pass 1, 355 miles per hour. Pass 2, 339 miles per hour. Pass 3, 351 miles per hour. He's crushing the record. The engineers on the ground are cheering, but Hughes isn't stopping. He wants to go faster. He pushes the throttle. The fuel gauge is dropping. The engineers are waving frantically at him to descend. He ignores them. He attempts a 7th pass. Silence. The main tank is dry. The engine sputters and dies. Hughes is at 300 miles per hour, low altitude, over a beet field. This is where the engineering meets the pilot. The H-1 has small wings for speed, not for gliding. It drops like a stone. Hughes doesn't panic. He keeps his nose up. He belly flops the silver bird into the dirt. Dust settles. The propeller is bent like a pretzel. The fuselage is scrapped. Hughes climbs out of the wreck. He isn't shaking. He isn't scared. He looks at his terrified team and says 3 words. "We can fix her." Then he checks the time. He had averaged 352 miles per hour. He was the fastest man on Earth. The H-1 didn't just break a record, it became the blueprint for the Second World War. Look at the Japanese Zero. Look at the German Focke-Wulf 190. Look at the American Hellcat. They all use flush rivets. They all use bell cowlings. They all look like the children of the H-1. Hughes had proven that aerodynamics mattered more than raw power. But speed wasn't enough. Hughes wanted range. He wanted to fly further, higher, and faster than anyone else. And this is where the trouble begins. You see, to build the perfect machine, Hughes needed total control. He couldn't delegate, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't stop. Was Hughes' obsessive perfectionism the source of his genius, or was it the price he paid for it? By 1938, Hughes isn't just building planes, he's acquiring airlines. He buys TWA and secretly meets with Lockheed. He wants an aircraft that can fly above the weather. He wants a pressurized cabin. He sketches the initial design for the Constellation, the aircraft that will define commercial air travel for decades. He is on top of the world. He is a hero. But the war is coming, and the government is asking for something impossible. They need a plane that can carry 700 troops. They need it to cross the Atlantic. And because of the war shortage, they tell him he cannot use metal. Hughes accepts the challenge. He decides to build the largest aircraft in history, a flying boat made of wood, the H-4 Hercules. Critics laughed. They called it the Spruce Goose. They said it would never fly. And as the pressure mounted, Hughes began to crack. The perfectionism that built the H-1 started to turn into something else, something darker. Bread. For the second half of his life, Howard Hughes would know nothing but pain. But before the drugs, before the darkness, there was one final moment of engineering brilliance that went terribly wrong. We left Hughes at the height of his power. He had conquered commercial travel with the Lockheed Constellation. He had connected New York to Paris. But commercial transport was too safe, too predictable. Hughes wanted to support the war effort. He wanted to build the ultimate spycraft. Enter the XF-11. This was a reconnaissance aircraft, designed to fly higher and faster than any fighter in the sky. It was a twin-boom, all-metal monster, packed with cameras instead of guns. But the engineering marvel, and the fatal flaw, was in the propulsion. Hughes fitted it with contra-rotating propellers. Most aircraft have a single propeller. This creates torque, a twisting force that tries to roll the plane in the opposite direction. The XF-11 used 2 propellers on each engine, spinning in opposite directions. In theory, this cancels out the torque. It provides massive thrust and stability. It is elegant engineering. But it is also complex. Twice the gears, twice the seals, twice the points of failure. On July 7th, 1946, Hughes decided to take the prototype up for his maiden flight. The Air Force advised him to stay over the unpopulated runway. Hughes headed for the city. Over Beverly Hills, a seal on the right rear propeller failed. Oil leaked out. The hydraulic pressure dropped. Without pressure, the propeller blades shifted pitch. They went flat against the wind. Instead of pulling the plane forward, the right engine acted like a giant air brake. The aircraft yawed violently to the right. Hughes fought the controls. He tried to correct the drag, but the XF-11 was heavy and dropping fast. He was losing altitude. He aimed for the Los Angeles Country Club golf course. He didn't make it. The right wing sliced through the upstairs bedroom of a doctor's house. The fuselage tore us through a second home and exploded into a third. The fuel tanks ruptured. The wreckage became an inferno. Hughes was pulled from the flames by a US Marine who happened to be nearby. His injuries were catastrophic. A crushed collarbone, Multiple cracked ribs, a collapsed lung, third-degree burns. The doctors didn't think he would survive the night. But the engineer's mind does not stop for pain. While lying in the hospital, unable to turn over, Hughes realised the standard hospital bed was inefficient. The foam was uncomfortable for a burn victim. So he called his engineers. From his deathbed, he designed a new type of hospital bed, one with motorised sections and a grid of heavy canvas tape to allow air circulation to his burns. He survived, but the crash changed him. To manage the agony, doctors gave him morphine, then codeine. The crash broke his body, but the painkillers would eventually break his mind. While Hughes recovered, his enemies were circulating. The war was over. The government had paid Hughes millions to build the massive wooden cargo plane, the H-4 Hercules, but he hadn't delivered it. They called him a war profiteer. They dragged him before a Senate hearing. The press mocked him. They called the plane the Spruce Goose. Hughes hated that name. Firstly, because it was an insult. Secondly, because as an engineer, he knew it was technically incorrect. The H-4 wasn't made of spruce, it was made of birch. And it wasn't just wood. Hughes used a process called Duramold. His team took thin veneers of birchwood and impregnated them with phenolic resin. They layered the wood with the grain running in alternating directions, then cured it under high heat and pressure. This wasn't carpentry. This was early composite materials science. Duramold was lighter than aluminum, resistant to fungus, and completely waterproof. It was the grandfather of the carbon fibre used in Formula One cars and modern jetliners today. August 1947. Hughes stands before the US Senate. They accuse him of stealing government money for a plane that won't fly. Hughes, still in pain, still addicted to codeine, looks the senator in the eye and says, "I put the sweat of my life into this thing. I have my reputation all rolled up in it. If it was a failure, I probably shall leave this country and never come back. And I mean it." He returned to California with one goal: vindication. November 2nd, 1947, Long Beach Harbour. The H-4 Hercules sits in the water. It is colossal. The wingspan is 320 feet, longer than a football pitch. The tail stands 8 stories high. Inside, the cargo hold is larger than a subway tunnel. Journalists crowd the boat. Hughes takes the pilot's seat. He tells the press he is only going to do taxi tests, running the engines to check the steering on the water. He fires up the 8 Pratt & Whitney R4360 Wasp Major engines. These are the most powerful piston engines ever built. 3,000 horsepower each. The noise is deafening. The giant wooden frame shudders. Hughes pushes the throttles forward. The aircraft accelerates. 40 miles per hour. 60 miles per hour. The journalists in the back are holding on. They expect him to slow down, but the engineer is listening to the machine. He feels the lift. He feels the Duramold wings biting into the air. Hughes makes a split-second decision. He doesn't cut the power. He pulls back on the yoke. In the next part, we witness the flight that silenced the world, and the strange, silent years that followed. The H-4 is about to leave the water, but once it lands, Howard Hughes will never be seen in public again. Daylight beneath the hull. For 26 seconds, the impossible happened. The H-4 Hercules, weighing 400,000 pounds, defied gravity. It didn't climb to the heavens, it hovered just 70 feet above the water, riding the ground effect, a cushion of air trapped between the wings and the ocean's surface. Hughes flew it for exactly 1 mile. Then he eased the throttles back. The giant settled gently onto the water. Silence returned to the cockpit. The press were stunned. The Senate was silenced. Hughes had proven his point. The Duramold composite worked. The aerodynamics held. The engineering was sound. He taxied back to the dock, stepped off the plane, and never flew it again. In fact, the H-4 Hercules would never leave the ground for the rest of time. Why? Some say it was madness, but the engineer in Hughes knew the truth. Timing is everything in innovation. The H-4 was a masterpiece of the piston age, but by 1947, the jet age had arrived. The Air Force didn't want slow wooden troop transports anymore. They wanted aluminium jet bombers. The Hercules was an evolutionary dead end. But Hughes couldn't let it go. For the next 30 years, he kept the H-4 hidden in a climate-controlled hangar. He spent $1 million a year of his own money keeping a crew on standby, ready to fly a plane that had no mission. It was his perfect, preserved child. As the 1950s rolled on, the man began to disappear. The pain from the XF-11 crash never left him. The codeine addiction tightened its grip. He moved to Las Vegas and bought the Desert Inn Hotel simply so he wouldn't have to check out. He darkened the windows. He refused to see anyone. The mad genius mythology took over. Stories of long fingernails, jars of urine, and obsession with germs. But while the man was decaying in a dark room, the company he built was reaching for the stars. This is the paradox of Howard Hughes. While he retired from the world, Hughes Aircraft Company became the most advanced engineering firm on the planet. He gathered the brightest minds, PhDs from Caltech and MIT, and gave them a simple directive: do the impossible. And they did. While Hughes watched movies in the dark, his engineers built the AIM-4 Falcon, the first guided air-to-air missile. They built the SYNCOM satellites, which made live global television possible. The recluse who refused to speak to people built the technology that allowed the world to talk. Then there was the final frontier. Before Neil Armstrong could walk on the moon, NASA needed to know if the surface was solid. Would a spaceship sink into the dust? They turned to Hughes. Hughes Aircraft built the Surveyor probes. In 1966, Surveyor 1 made the first soft landing on the moon. It smells back photos. It proved the lunar surface was safe. When Apollo 11 landed 3 years later, they were standing on a path paved by Howard Hughes's engineers. Even in the 1970s, the CIA came to Hughes for help. A Soviet submarine had sunk in the Pacific, carrying nuclear codes. The CIA wanted to steal it. They needed a cover story. Who was crazy enough to build a massive, weird ship in the middle of the ocean? Only Howard Hughes. They built the Glomar Explorer, a giant claw disguised as a mining ship. It was the final great engineering caper of his life, a spy mission that only he could make plausible. April 5th, 1976. A private jet takes off from Mexico heading for Houston. Inside, an old man lies on a stretcher. He weighs just 90 pounds. He is unrecognizable. X-rays later revealed broken hypodermic needles lodged in his arms. Howard Robard Hughes Jr. died in midair. He died where he felt most alive, in the sky. It is easy to remember Hughes for the madness, for the tissues and the germ phobia. But look at the world around you. If you fly on a commercial jet, you are flying in a pressurized cabin, a standard he set. If you watch satellite TV, you are using a network his company pioneered. If you use a composite tennis racket or drive a carbon fiber car, you are using materials his team validated. Howard Hughes was a flawed human being. He was obsessive. It was difficult. He was broken. But he was also an engineer in the purest sense of the word. He saw a world full of friction, and he spent his life trying to sand it down. And for a brief moment in 1935 and again in 1947, he made the world smooth.